tradition, ideology. So don't forget Cain. So if we don't forget Cain, the way that he prayed to the Lord, that's a negative thing. Then notice that they had a negative way of worshiping the one true God. Now, this should be great evidence to you that when people today have a hard time thinking about, well, I don't see how I can worship Satan during the end times. Guess what? Genesis 5 is clear-cut evidence of today. Technology, civilization, education, and advancement. Right? We've studied that. There is no doubt Genesis 5 is copycatting today. It's not like today you see a bunch of people saying, I truly worship Satan, or I truly worship a whole bunch of gods. Now, albeit that you can get some Hindus and other people like that, but if you count a lot of the people, and I would even dare say majority of the people, they don't do polytheism or multiple gods. It's a one true God. Muslims claim that there is no other God but Allah. So they take one God, monotheism, so seriously that they said, we don't even believe in images. But we know that they're worshiping a false God. And they think it's the one true God. Didn't you know some Muslims, they confuse the translation of God to them is Allah? So when you say Allah in their language, you might be trying to say God, but you know that misconception is already deep within their religion that they're thinking the Muslim God. See, so just because it's talking about the one true God at that verse doesn't mean that it's a good thing. It could be a false monotheistic type of God or the one true God, but in the wrong way. Point is, it matches with today's generation. We all have different ways of worshiping the one true God, but they're all the same way. How about that? See, that cleverly disguises, polytheism, Satanism, or anything that you would think is blasphemous. It sounds more Christian. It sounds more Bible. It sounds like the one true God that we all worship. Isn't this eye-opening? This is very eye-opening. Now, if you look at some Hebrew literature behind it, it's very interesting. There were Hebrew scholars that took the Hebrew Old Testament, and when they read Genesis 4:26, the reading goes that they called upon God, they prayed to the Lord irreverently, blasphemously. Isn't that interesting? Wow. But let's look at another passage here. Let's look at two enlightening passages. But we're going to start out with Genesis 31. All right, this is going to be mind-blowing. Look at Genesis 31. This is going to be mind-blowing. Notice that the first mention of people worshiping multiple gods, the first mention of polytheism, is Genesis. After the flood. Wait, after the flood? Why not before the flood? That's strange, right? Well, when we hit Genesis 6, the gods were on the earth. And they were doing something. But let's get back one by one, shall we? All right, Genesis 31. The first mention of worshiping multiple gods, polytheism. Verse 30, Genesis 31:30, it's Laban, Jacob's uncle. And now, verse 30, and now though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? His idols. They had to make images of these little gods. Why? Because they're no longer on the earth directly like Genesis 6. Something was going on. Something was going on strange. But all you have to do is look at the law of first mention. Biblical hermeneutics. That's not this is the first time they worship multiple gods. First mention of worshiping multiple gods. But that's not the first mention of multiple gods. Do any of you recall? Yeah. Can you give a wild guess? Go to Genesis 3. Yeah. Some of you are getting it. Genesis 3. But notice in Genesis 3, It's not polytheism. It's not worship of multiple gods. They recognize in this verse a one true God. But that these multiple gods, you can live and intermingle and become, and then somehow we could probably do our communication in our own way of doing things in comparison to the true God. We could beat the true God. Genesis 3. Look at this. Satan, look at this. He acknowledged the one true God. Genesis 3:5. Genesis 3:5. For what? God. This is the serpent speaking to Eve. He recognizes there is a one true God. But look what he does. He inserts the multiple gods in here. Doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods. See that? That's the first mention of gods. Knowing good and evil. But that's not the first mention of gods that they're to be worshipped. That you're supposed to worship them. No. We believe there is a one true God to worship. We believe there is a one true God to worship, but in a sense, mankind and all of us, we endorse where we can become like God, so to speak. Isn't that the civilization of today? They're trying to play God. They're replacing God's power with humanism. They're playing God. Science, they always say this, science always tries to play God. And then you notice that, there's an endorsement here that we can all become like gods. Isn't that with the esoteric, the occultists and all these people, that God can be in you, and pantheism, and that we're all a god in some way. But that doesn't mean that they deny a one true God. But it's a God that's irreverential, distorted in their own way of thinking. Wow. You know what? Genesis 4 and 5 is a repetition of history, and what men learn from history, church, is that men never what? Learn from history. Everyone is, let's be honest, we're all stupid people. Mankind is so stupid. We thought we got smarter than the past 6,000 years. What are you talking about, man? You're repeating a pattern of 6,000 years. Isn't that what you liberal psychologists retort, that, what you imitate from is something that you did from mommy or from daddy or something from genealogy? Then why are you too stupid to not acknowledge that 6,000 years that you're repeating such a pattern, if you admit that? See, sometimes these idiotic, educated fools, they don't even pay attention to their own research and work. All right, let's look at Genesis 5 now. All right, so we see what men learn from history is that men, they just seem to never learn from history. They are repeating a pattern.